When I say that I ran to New York City to watch the 1-hour premiere of the Lightning Thief musical, I mean that I ran. I was in New York City for less than 12 hours. I flew out at 5:30 a.m. and got back to Kansas City at midnight. I'm not kidding, but it was so much fun and I'm so glad I got to go. So, the 1-hour Lightning Thief musical is the third-ish iteration we've had of this musical. So in 2014, we got the 1-hour version of Lightning Thief musical. This had 6 cast members and it was very much a touring production meant for schools and libraries to sort of, bring about the Lightning Thief musical. There used to be a recording of this on YouTube. It has since been taken down. So any comparisons I make to the 1-hour musical is based on my memory from over a year ago. I was so angry when it got taken down. Then, in 2017, they expanded the show to the 2-hour version. This is the one that has the soundtrack. There's the bootlegs of it. This is the one that made it to Broadway. So this one I know pretty well. I've also got the, script for it, so I know exactly what lines are said in that book. And then that closed off of Broadway February of 2020, right before, And then now, on October 2nd, 2022, they've opened the 1-hour version. So the big question going into this is what songs were going to stay, what songs were going to go, what characters were going to be added, what characters were going to go. You get my point. How are they going to take the 2-hour version and morph it back to a 1-hour version? And I was very impressed by how they did it and that they managed to cut so few songs while still keeping the heart of it all the same. So the reason why they did the 1-hour show is that it's more marketable, and especially for our younger audiences, because again, the Percy Jackson is very much meant for elementary, middle schoolers. So a 1-hour show is a lot easier. Also, you can do more performances, so it's less of a stress on the actors to do 2 performances in a day than it is to do 2 performances of a 2-hour show. Also, they're back to the 6 actors, so it's a lot cheaper. They don't have a live band, so that makes it a lot cheaper. All of these things all around make it a lot cheaper, which makes it a lot more marketable. It still very much retained the sort of aesthetic, I feel like, of the 2-hour musical. And that's the thing, is the 2-hour musical was always meant to be rough on the edges and, put together, but not necessarily put together in the way that we think of a refined Broadway performance. So the 1-hour version very much feels like it's going back to its roots. So the set was very bare bones, relied a lot on moving elements of mic boxes. I don't know what they're called. That's what they look like. So they use those for anything. They were storing props. They were storing costume changes. They were being used whenever they're on the bike and drive, that was the bike. Whenever Percy was getting pulled into Tartarus, they pushed him forward and they were able to pull him back, which was really cool. They used those things a lot. The set was very much 6 or 7 mesh panels that they were able to rotate about and use as doors and hang stuff on. So at one point they hang a Camp Half-Blood banner on it. And then they also had this middle platform that was 2-layered. So they were able to put people underneath and then they were able to have people dangle their legs off the edge, as apparently happens a lot in this show, where they would talk and dangle their legs over a lake sort of thing. On to the props. They did a lot of interesting things with the props because most props were multi-purpose. So one of my favorite multi-purpose props that I presume this is new in the show, again, might have been in the 1-hour version, is every character had a mic stand. So they had the normal stage mics or whatever, and then everybody also had a handheld mic. And so they had mic stands, so they would put them in for a really good moment, or they'd use them for dramatics. But then also they, for the most part, were able to pull that stand out and they were able to use it. So Percy's mic stand was riptide. Now, it wasn't an accurate riptide, so if that's something that you worry about, you are going to have an issue with that. But it was this really cool blue, wavy, pointy sword that he was able to use. Chiron's was a hoof. So he was able to be this is my extra leg. And that's sort of how they did the Chiron sit, is they had Chiron have the extra leg and then he had some sort of butt attachment that made him have more of a horse butt, but he didn't have the extra legs and back, so it was a little bit easier. Another really cool thing they were able to do due to the sort of scrappy nature of the show is they were able to utilize the lights and the speakers. The actors manipulated them during the scene. So during Tree on the Hill, Percy takes one of the lights that they have and angles it so that way it's on Grover, which is really cool. Another really fun thing that they did that I really, really enjoyed is during Good Kid, Percy kicked a speaker, and then the audio made a, you know, one of those screeching noises, what happens whenever you kick a speaker. And so he very quickly like ran over and like fixed it, but it was sort of a really good jarring, like, whoa there, he's angry, good way to convey that sort of, which was fun. Another interesting prop addition, I don't know if this is a prop addition, honest to God, I can't remember if Annabeth uses her invisibility cap in the 1 hour version. I don't even remember if she has it. So Annabeth now has an invisibility cap and she uses it. So she uses it at the end of a scene I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and then she also uses it during the Medusa fight. She might have used it one other time, but I can't remember. Now, the invisibility cap wasn't a Yankees cap. Instead, it was a green, purple bucket hat. I'll try and put a picture of what it somewhat looks like there, which sort of demonstrated, like, you know, the shimmery nature you would think of whenever you think of like invisibility stuff. And every time she put it on, there was like a shink, and everybody was like, okay, great, she's invisible now. But it was cool to see Annabeth get to like actually use the invisibility cap as opposed to like not. Also, Hades, when we were in the underworld, snapped open a fan that just said shade, which felt very Hades-like, and I very much recommend. Another thing that they did that was very different from what they did in the 2 hour version, but I liked a lot more, is in the 2 hour version, whenever Percy uses his water powers, they use a toilet paper and a leaf blower, which was a really cool effect. However, now they've changed it to silly string, blue silly string. So that was pretty cool because blue silly string, first of all, I think it attaches better than the toilet paper, because the toilet paper, like, sometimes it would miss and you just end up with like the character sitting next to a pile of toilet paper. But the silly string, like, silly string attaches to the character and you very much got it. And also it was blue. But then also you didn't have to deal with like people getting the blow dryers, like them ready to go, because it was just somebody with the silly string. And then Percy during Son of Poseidon, whenever he's fighting Ares, stood there for like 20 minutes. Not 20 minutes, that was a lot. Like 20 seconds. Shaking the silly string, and everyone's like, okay, we know what he's about to do, when will he do it? And then he silly stringed Ares, which was really fun, and I really liked the way that they did that. Where this musical gets its points, this 1 hour version, is in the costuming. I loved the costuming. It was so much fun. First and foremost, Percy Jackson wears pearls. I love how the Lightning Thief musical just keeps making Percy Jackson buyer and buyer. They're just like, yeah, no, that boy. The 1 hour version originally, pretty straight, pretty white. The 2 hour version and the Broadway version, decently gay, still decently white. The 1 hour version now, pretty gay, not pretty white, and it's amazing, and I love it. Percy, first of all, this is the first time I've ever seen this iteration. There is uniforms for Yancey, so they all wear a little coat. And then at the end of prologue / the day I got expelled, Percy rips off his coat, rips off his tie and shirt, and reveals this striped blue and black shirt underneath with ripped jeans, of course, Vans. I couldn't figure out what was on his socks. It looked sort of spacey, but I don't think it was at the end of the day. And his pearls, and I loved it. For Annabeth, she was wearing what I can only describe as like fluorescent green and black punk attire. So Annabeth had braids, and these braids started off in two sort of pigtail buns that were yellow and green, because she originally starts off playing Nancy. And then after we get done, before we get to the first time Percy meets Annabeth, right, you're my dream girl, whatever situation, she takes them down so that way now they're twin pigtails. And so that sort of changed them from being more green buns to being more white blonde buns. But it was really cool. And then she's wearing like these black cargo pants, I think are the best words for them. They had a lot of pockets, which was great because she would shove her invisibility cap in there, and it was amazing. I loved her costume. Grover's costuming was horrendous, and that's the way it should be. He was wearing his furry goat pants. They're just literally cargo pants that had a little bit more fur on them. He was wearing like a purple Save the Earth planet, and then he was wearing this horrendous pink feathered vest. Like, it's not feathered, it was furry. It was horrible. The actor did have like the correct facial hair, which I was very impressed by, is that he had like a little tiny beard, and then that was really cool. I will say another one of my favorite things about the costuming, all three of them wear glasses. More justice for blind demigods. Luke is wearing what I can only describe as like a black and yellow tracksuit, racing suit sort of thing. So it was like a one piece, so he would just throw costume pieces on over that, which was really cool. Chiron, I don't remember what Chiron was wearing, gonna be completely real. Clarice was wearing this skin tight orange and pink sort of flamey shirt with cargo shorts, and then she had like knee pads and good high combat boots, which was really cool. And then the actress who plays Clarice also ended up playing Sally, so she would throw on like a little waitress uniform whenever she was playing Sally. So another really interesting costuming choice that they did is Mrs. Dodds. So Mrs. Dodds in the 2-hour production is this very large winged, probably monstrosity to operate. So what they did now is she put on a spoon hat. I don't really know what the point of that was, gonna be real. And then she had a leather jacket that then was chopped. And so the leather jacket, she just like pulled up like that and it looked like wings. And I think it did a really good job. Gabe. Smelly Gabe. This one, they're gonna anger some people with. He comes out wearing a New York Jets jersey. And I was like, I don't think he's worn that before. That was really good. He also had one of those like beer helmets on. Like, this is what it looks like. And I thought that was super fun because, you know, he is an asshole. Of course, he's a Jets fan. I'm going to talk about Tree on the Hill next, but for right now, Cyclops. The Cyclops is in Tree on the Hill this time around, and it's really interesting because what they did is he's in like a bush suit, one of those like really leafy things, and they put a giant spotlight on him to sort of signify the eye. So that was a super cool costuming choice. I don't remember most of the other costumings, to be real. One of the biggest shakeups in the musical is the placement of Tree on the Hill. So Tree on the Hill in the 2-hour version, it wasn't in the 1-hour version. In the 2-hour version comes after Drive, before DOA, right? They're on the bus on their way to LA. In the 1-hour version, the new 1-hour version, it takes place immediately after Killer Quest. So the way it works is as we're approaching the ending of Act 1, I was like, how are they gonna do this? Because they don't have an intermission anymore. So they end Killer Quest behind these 2 screens, they pull them open, and then there's a completely new scene. And this scene is essentially, Annabeth goes, as soon as we cross this line, all the monsters in the world are going to be after us. And Percy's like, great, you go first. And then they bicker, and then Grover's like, we're all gonna go. And then they go, and then they hear a noise. And Annabeth's like, I'm gonna go investigate it. You stay here and don't get killed. And she puts on her invisibility cap and poofs off. And Percy asks Grover, why this line? What's this tree about? Which then leads into Grover singing Tree on the Hill, which was really cute and really sweet. Now, one thing that they did change with Tree on the Hill is in the original Tree on the Hill, Grover doesn't really interact with Annabeth, Percy, or Annabeth, Talia, and Luke. But in this one, Talia comes up and like asks Grover's questions. So Talia is like a very active character. She has lines. So Talia's like, which way do we go? And he goes, go north. And then he turns back to the audience and he goes, I don't know which way is north. And you sort of get his like, oh no, I've screwed up, I directly caused Talia's death sort of mentality that he goes through. And it was really interesting, and I really liked the placement. And then they finish Tree on the Hill, and then it's instantly into Medusa. So Lost, bye-bye. No more Lost. Lost is gone. You're never gonna get that scene, which means you don't get the squirrel scene, which I really liked. So that was cut. You go straight into Medusa's lair. The rejoining of Annabeth to the group was a little bit weird. I thought it was just a little bit awkward in that they're like, oh look, it's a statue. Oh wait, no, it's Annabeth. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird. And so they do the whole Medusa scene, which is pretty cool. And then the bus blows up. And I'm like, that's not the order, but it's fine because at the end of Medusa, they do My Grand Plan and Grover comes back. He's like, I got us 3 bus tickets, and then the bus explodes. So they fight the Furies, then they go to the St. Louis Arch, then they meet Ares, and then they end up in LA. So that was what was added. For the most part, I didn't notice anything else new. There were maybe some lines that were added just to flow better. For the most part, that was the only new scene that I can remember. One thing I really ended up being surprised about is that at the end of the day, they only cut 3 songs. Now they shortened pretty much every single song. I think the only song they maybe didn't shorten were Bring on the Monsters, Son of Poseidon, Last Day of Summer, and strong. I think every other song was shortened. Maybe Killer Quest wasn't shortened. 3 songs were completely cut. Those were Lost, DOA, Campfire Song. Listen, I have said this before and I'll say it again. I don't like Campfire Song. So Campfire Song being cut was of no complaint to me. If you like Campfire Song, you probably will be sad it cut. The way they ended up doing that is they did Capture the Flag, Percy drenched Clarice, boom, claiming. So everything in between there instantly got cut. And then I already talked about how Lost got cut. And then DOA, what they ended up doing is Charon is now very much just like going down, and they just do, it's a really fun scene where Charon's like, no vomiting, and then they were like, why would anybody vomit? And then everything goes to shit, and then Grover turns around and vomits. Starting from the beginning, rapid fire, these are the cuts I remember. So they, from the first song, Prologue, from Daddy Doesn't Love Me and Mom, Me Is a God, all the way, It's Time You Heard Our Side of the Story, so like probably a minute or so of that song, it was completely cut. And then they cut the whole, I didn't really get the story, I didn't really pay attention bit in that song. Let's see, what else? Strong is the exact same. They cut a lot of Another Terrible Day, so there are no campers in Another Terrible Day. Another Terrible Day is just Dionysus complaining, and then boom, you're into Chiron reveal. They cut the scene after their sign where Luke and Annabeth are like talking about Percy, and they're like, maybe he's up to something. They cut that entire scene. A lot of the scenes that they cut were sort of short, tension, sort of conflict building scenes. So I would say on the whole, this version of Percy and Annabeth, the 2-hour musicals version of Percy and Annabeth had a lot more highs and a lot more lows. This version of this 1-hour version was very much, they didn't have as much conflict, but they also didn't have as many like cute moments. They had one really cute moment where Sally at the very end was like, to Percy, and it was super cute. I loved that. But all of them around, Percabeth didn't have quite as much like, why do you hate me sort of things as they do in the first book and in the 2-hour movie. The Chiron scene, the Chiron, Dionysus, and Percy scene after he's claimed is a lot shorter, which is sad. I love that scene from Dionysus where he's like, turn you into a dolphin. That was all entirely cut. It's pretty much just, you were born, you stole the bolt, I'm gonna kick you out of camp. So I didn't love that, but I mean, that's what ends up happening. I already said the squirrel was cut. The sword training scene between Percy and Annabeth leading into My Grand Plan was a lot shorter. It was just sort of her going, put your hands here, and he swings it a few times. So it was a lot shorter, so that's sort of what I mean when I say the Percabeth moments were short. There was no bathtub joke, which is really sad. I really liked the bathtub joke when the, how did the 3 of you drown? How did the 3 of you die? Drowned in a bathtub. All 3 of you? It was a big bathtub. That was cut. The scene where Annabeth finds the lightning bolt in Percy's backpack, and Percy's like, how did you know it was in there? And she's like, you did it. And he's like, you did it. And then they're both like, wait, no, we're chill. That scene wasn't in there. Sally and Poseidon don't interact. So in the 2-hour version, Sally and Poseidon like sort of flirt, and Percy's like, this is weird, we're moving. So that scene doesn't happen. So one of my issues with the 2-hour version is Seaweed Brain Wise Girl. In the 2-hour version, Seaweed Brain is said quite frequently. Wise Girl is said once. And the way Chris always said it was like, Wise Girl. And I hated it every single time. In the 2-hour version, the Wise Brain Seaweed Girl isn't super present compared to the 1-hour version. The 1-hour version, in my opinion, the original 1-hour version did Seaweed Brain Wise Girl a lot more. They said it a lot more. And then the 2-hour version, Wise Girl is only said once, and it said after Luke stabs Percy. We kept that, which I didn't love. It was much better acted. I liked the way that it happened a little bit better, but it still wasn't. I like Seaweed Brain Wise Girl to happen a little bit more often. All told, the 1-hour version of the Lightning Thief musical, in comparison to its 2019 Broadway predecessor and the 2014 1-hour version, is much gayer and much better. Now, do you lose some things? Yeah, it's not a perfect adaptation. It's a 1-hour musical to a whole book. It's never gonna be super great. However, they did a really good job with adapting it. I was really worried about it because I thought that was a really risky game. It was super good, and it still had the same heart. The actors were amazing and brought so much to the role, and they were so much fun to watch. They all had amazing stage presences. The actress who plays Annabeth, My Grand Plan, that's maybe my favorite iteration of My Grand Plan I've ever seen. It was so good. The actor who played Percy was really good at capturing Percy's youth and his anger and like his fidgety, and I really liked like everything. It was really fun. It was really fun. Luke, oh, the actor who played Luke, beautiful. I will say, this is also the gayest version of the Lightning Thief musical we've got this far. There was definitely some gayness going on between Annabeth and Clarice in Put You in Your Place. They were fighting it. I was like, this feels gayer than normal. And then, obviously, not Luke Percy. Last Day of Summer? Maybe a little bit Luke Percy. I was like, listen, because they're both adult actors, like there's not like that clearly defined age difference. They were like wrestling on the ground, y'all. I was like, you can't tell me this isn't a little bit fruity. Which just supports my headcanon that Luke was Percy's bi-awakening.